Carl Jung is a famous psychoanalyst who has had a big impact on modern psychology. He came up with a lot of important words that we still use today, like extroversion and introversion, which describe how outgoing or shy someone is. He also came up with ideas about archetypes, which are like universal symbols that everyone understands, and the anima and animus, which are parts of ourselves that are masculine or feminine. Jung was a psychiatrist who worked with people who had mental health problems. He's considered to be the founder of something called analytical psychology or Jungian analysis. When he was young, he met another famous psychologist named Sigmund Freud, who was the founder of something called psychoanalysis. They were friends and worked together on some ideas about how people's minds work. But eventually, they had a big disagreement and stopped working together. This was because Jung started to have his own ideas about psychology, and he discovered something he called the collective unconscious. This was a really important idea for him, but it was different from what Freud believed. So, even though they had been friends and collaborators for a long time, they had to go their separate ways because they couldn't agree on everything. Jung is a famous psychologist who also studied the human mind. He believed that his way of studying the mind was based on real-life experiences, which led to a scientific study of the psyche. His main book, Collected Works, took 60 years to write and was the culmination of his research. Jung separated the mind into three different parts: consciousness, personal unconscious, and collective unconscious. Consciousness is the part of the mind that we are aware of and includes all of our experiences. It is where our sense of self, or ego, comes from. However, according to Jung, consciousness is not as important as the unconscious. The personal unconscious is unique to each individual and is made up of things that we are not aware of, have forgotten, or have repressed because they are too upsetting to remember. On the other hand, the collective unconscious is the deepest part of our unconscious and is something we inherit genetically. It is not shaped by personal experiences. This is where Jung believed archetypes, or universal patterns of behavior and thought, were found. Archetypes are patterns and images that are shared among all humans, and they exist in our unconscious mind. According to Jung, we are born with these archetypes just as we are born with innate behavioral patterns. Jung was very interested in studying religious and mythological symbols, and this helped him discover archetypes. He found that different cultures had similar myths and symbols, which reinforced his idea of archetypes being universal. Interestingly, Jung also found the same symbols in the dreams of patients with schizophrenia, which further supported his idea of archetypes and the collective unconscious. Jung traveled to many places to learn about different cultures and their beliefs. For example, he went to East Africa to learn about people who had never been exposed to European culture. He also went to India, where he was exposed to a different way of life and religion. Hinduism played an important role in his understanding of symbolism and the unconscious mind. Jung identified many different archetypes, such as the father, the mother, the wise old man, the hero, and the trickster, among others. These archetypes help us understand ourselves and the world around us. We're going to learn about 4 important ideas called Jungian archetypes. The first one is the self. It's different from the ego, which is a part of our conscious mind that develops during our life. The self is even more important than the ego, and it includes both our conscious and unconscious mind. The ego is only part of the picture, because there are other parts of our personality that we're not aware of. These unconscious parts include our physical and inner selves, which have both conscious and unconscious aspects. Our individuality comes from our ego, but our whole personality is made up of both conscious and unconscious parts, which is what Jung calls the self. To become our true selves, Jung believed in a process called individuation or self-realization. This means we need to figure out who we really are by discovering our conscious and unconscious elements. The next part of Jungian archetypes focuses on the unconscious mind, which is the most important part of ourselves. There are 3 archetypes within the unconscious mind that have the most influence on our conscious mind, and they are the persona, shadow, and anima/animus. The persona is like a mask we put on in different situations to fit in or be accepted. It's not our true self, but a persona we present to others. By pleasing others with our persona, we may hide negative traits about ourselves that we're not aware of. These traits form our shadow, which is another archetype we'll learn about. Jung believed that everyone has a dark side to their personality, which he called the shadow. This part of ourselves is often unknown to us, and it contains things we don't like or are ashamed of. The things in the personal unconscious are acquired during our lifetime, while the things in the collective unconscious are archetypes that have always been present. The shadow is the easiest to access, because it comes from the personal unconscious. To become aware of our shadow, we must make a moral effort to recognize its dark aspects as real and present. However, some parts of our shadow may be harder to control and influence than others. If we don't recognize our own psychological projection, which is when we deny our own unconscious impulses and attribute them to others, we will create an illusory environment where we see the world as a reflection of our unknown self. The shadow is important because it balances our overall psyche. If we don't adapt to our shadow, we may become passive and feel like a victim of our own shadow. It's common for people to project their shadow onto others, which means we see qualities in others that we don't like about ourselves. To grow as a person, we must integrate our shadow and balance it with our persona, which is the way we present ourselves to the world. Sometimes, encountering our shadow may appear in dreams as a person of the same sex as us. This experience is unique to each individual and is not inherited in the collective unconscious. Understanding our own shadow is a central part of the process of individuation, which means becoming our true selves. The story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde teaches us that it's important for our conscious mind, represented by Jekyll, to acknowledge and accept our unconscious mind, represented by Mr. Hyde. If we ignore our unconscious mind, we may become controlled by it. This process of acknowledging our unconscious mind is called integrating the shadow, and it's the first step in analyzing ourselves. It's important to continuously recognize and integrate our shadow throughout our lives. Within our shadow, there are two parts called the anima and the animus. Every man has an unconscious feminine side called the anima, and every woman has an unconscious masculine side called the animus. These aspects are farther from consciousness than the shadow and often go unnoticed. A man's anima is characterized by feminine qualities, like a child seeking protection from a mother figure. A woman's animus represents rationality and assertiveness. Integrating the anima and animus can help us become more caring and deliberative. The anima and animus often appear in dreams and fantasies, representing the spontaneous products of our unconscious. Recognizing and integrating them into our psyche can lead to a more solid foundation for ourselves, helping us overcome our struggles and become more aware of who we truly are. It takes moral strength to change our beliefs and integrate the contents of our unconscious mind, but it can have a considerable influence on our lives. That's all for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Hit the like button, do subscribe the channel and comment if you want a detailed video on archetypes. Thanks for watching.